Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatirons.tuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Flatiron Syndicate Podcast. We are here today with special guest who needs no introduction at this point. You know, I'm Tanner, aka Smeedia, is on the podcast, and so there's a couple reasons, Tanner, that it was time to have a conversation, time to
Mhm.
catch up. Um, One of the big ones, of course, is progress on the new RSTi is going right along. You got blue back, so kind of check in and see what's going on with all those cars. But there's another reason, maybe a bigger reason for both you and us to bring you on and have a quick conversation. And you've mentioned it to the people, but you want to tell them what that reason is.
Yeah, so I mean, we are working with you guys obviously now as exclusively as our Subaru partner for everything that we're doing on the channel at this point. For any of the Subarus, if you guys carry it, we're going through you guys for a lot of this stuff. So I mean, we have our discount code with you guys. We're working on expanding other things, trying to help the community out. Like obviously, little bit of a discount on parts because I mean not everything everybody does is a modification, but sometimes it is OEM repair and OEM maintenance, and you guys carry honestly the best inventory for all of that stuff. So I mean I've been talking with you for years now at this
Yeah,
point and ordering parts through you guys for years. So I mean naturally it felt like a good opportunity to be able to jump on board and actually work with you guys. So I'm
it made
excited for it.
sense. We are too, and it's and it we're this is now our second month of running, and it seems like you guys at home have had some decent luck with it so far. And it's exciting for us because it helps us help you even more. So, we've been trying to help you in the background here and there, and now like getting this all put into place. It's just, you guys at home, you have a way to support us, and then by proxy also support Tanner and everything that he does. It just seems like a good working relationship, and it's been great. We're excited for it. We cannot wait to see what this year is going to bring with all of this, all these cool projects that you're working on.
Yeah, I've been hyped working with you guys. Like, it's nice to be able to like if I have a question about something, I can call you, I can talk to you about it, I can email you. And there's actually that's one thing that I've always loved about Flatirons is it's not the largest company out there, but it's still like a good size where if you need to call and talk to somebody, you can get a hold of someone. And
Yeah,
it's not like you're being funneled around through all these machines and whatnot. If somebody has a question about something they're wanting to order, you guys are already knowledgeable about it. So you guys, for the most part, can help them make an educated decision on, hey, you shouldn't buy X part, you should buy Y part or whatever it might be. And I mean, it's you guys have been an awesome company. I mean, I remember when I first stumbled across you guys, it was right when I got my '05 STI. I bought it with bent valves in the heads and I needed buckets
okay.
for it. And I think I accidentally mispronounced the company name as Flatorius Tuning or something like that. It
Hmm.
was the first time I stumbled across you guys, and then from there I was like, well, they got a ton of stuff, and it's already at like great pricing compared to everyone else. I was like, let's keep going through them.
Absolutely. Yeah, Flatirons. It's a weird thing unless you're in Colorado and unless you're right here in the Front Range, like Flatirons, like what is that?
I mean, I
And
just
it's
recently learned that you guys are tied to a dealership. I had
mhm.
no idea for years up until I want to say it was like within the past 6 months I found out that you guys are actually tied to a dealership.
Yeah, it's basically it's we are separate but same parent company.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we have all basically full access to the Subaru catalog of parts, and that's how we can offer the Subaru parts that we do at such, aggressive pricing. Because usually what we have Subaru parts on our website advertised for is what wholesale shops pay
Yeah.
for, or shops pay wholesale for the parts, I should say. And that's just because of our relationship with the dealership. And then it doesn't hurt that they're a block up the street. So we usually get, two deliveries a day of a whole bunch of stuff. And yeah, so it's quick to land in our warehouse and quick to get shipped out to the folks at home that need the stuff. And then, also we can get all the JDM stuff through companies like Roger Clark and a couple other contacts. We try and cover the Subaru gamut as best as we can and give everybody the best options for all that good stuff.
I mean, I think you guys have one of the largest varieties of like OEM and OEM plus parts that I've seen from pretty much anyone else out there.
Oh,
I
thank
mean,
you.
what was it? I recently bought my taillights for my RS from you guys,
Hmm.
and I thought they were going to be well. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I recently bought those from you guys. I see them on eBay. People trying to sell these things for like $900 to $1,000. I'm like, where are you? You can still buy these. You can
Yeah.
still buy these brand new. I'm like, where are these prices coming from?
Yeah. Well, so what's weird is with the RS taillights specifically,
Mhm.
the US spec, so what you got are the JDM taillights, which
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
still get as new, but the RS taillights that were USDM, which have the orange instead of the clear, those are discontinued and have been
Yeah,
discontinued for
I'm
a long time.
referencing the JDM ones on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but what yeah, what we have seen too is that like there's some people that have, take off USDM taillights that are asking, the same, if not double, what we sell the JDM taillights
Dude,
brand
I
new
think I
as.
threw my USDM ones away. I was like, no one wants these. No one's gonna buy these.
Yeah, it's weird when anything goes out of availability, then that's where everybody starts to get really, really excited
Oh,
about them.
trust me, I know that
Yeah,
all too well right now, trying to piece together this RS. This the
weather
coupe
stripping.
specifically,
Yeah,
specifically with it being a coupe.
yep. Yeah, it's there was there was somebody that was doing a 22B build kind of along the lines of what you're doing maybe
Mhm.
3 or 4 years ago that came in and they said, I want all of the trim pieces. Like I just want every trim piece in the car that I can get.
Yeah.
And when we were piecing this together, a lot of these things we were finding is like, well, there's one left in the country.
Hmm.
And so we pieced this all together and we kind of got everything in place. And Subaru is not like they don't give any warning when something goes out of
No,
availability
it's
or
just
if it's
like, hey,
discontinued.
it's out of the system now. We're done.
Well, and it's even worse because it's like you see that there's one of a thing, and okay, well I'll order the one thing, and like then it'll be gone, and then like oftentimes then they just come back, and so you just kind of have to assume that well they'll do another run and they'll make more of these parts, and like at some point in the future we'll be able to get more of these, but then like a lot of these trim pieces those were the last ones, and they
Yeah.
all went to this one guy down in Denver. And then I had like a couple people call up thereafter and just like, no, there's nothing left. And yeah, come to find out, well, no, they've just discontinued all of that stuff.
Yep. I am going through that right now, trying to
Yeah,
find. I went to the junkyard yesterday in hopes I could find literally anything. I found a couple pop clips I needed,
yeah,
some other like small stuff that's discontinued that you can't buy anymore. But like I was talking about this in my next video that's going out, and I was like, I wish because I feel like old Subaru, like Subaru in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, they would do something like this, like Nissan did with the Skylines, where they bring out a legacy program to
yeah,
start reproducing some of these parts for these cars that are just, you can't, like, there's no option. Like door seals for a
yeah,
coupe, if you don't have some, you can't get any
yeah.
ever.
Yeah, the weather stripping is that's a huge challenge because it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's, like so Roger Clark is doing what they can to kind of reproduce some of these things.
Hmm.
And I mean you've got them, you've seen like the rear quarter window
Yeah.
seal and then like the cowl seal, things that have been discontinued for a long time that are simple enough that they can find a way to remake it. But like that weather stripping around the door,
Yeah, that's a complex seal.
yeah. And it's I've twisted their arm a few times to say like, hey guys, can you look at making this maybe it's time again because yeah, like you said, especially
They
for the
would
coupe.
sell so many of them if they
Yeah,
remade the trim pieces for the coupes, the door seals for the channel track that goes on there, the actual ones that clip onto the door. They would sell those no problem
yeah,
because there's such a high demand for them. Nobody else makes them. Subaru
yeah,
discontinued them. You can't even get. Let's say you do find a coupe in a junkyard somewhere. That car's at this point still going to be anywhere between 25 and 30
yeah,
years old. That
yep,
seal's not going to be in good shape. Like
yep,
even the ones that I was able to save on mine, they're not in the best shape. They're old. They're
yeah.
worn.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, and the hardest part with the coupes, especially, is that production wise, there's just not as many.
Hmm.
It's harder to find a coupe versus the sedan. There's
Yeah,
there's
I
way
can
more
find
options with
so
the
many
sedan.
sedan and wagon seals out there. Those are no problem. But the coupes, those ones are
Yeah,
it's like the rare of the rare. Like door cards, I need door cards for mine. I couldn't find any, so I ended up getting
yeah,
the six overcrest replacement panels. Which I mean, I'm glad that there is an option. Obviously, I think I'd rather prefer having OEM, but if you can't have OEM,
yeah,
at least there's a option.
yeah. Six Over Crest makes good stuff too. It
Mhm.
it's you're not losing anything on from the quality standpoint there with those
No.
guys, which
Plus,
is
they still
good.
make it so that way you can keep the window switches, which is nice.
Yes, yes, yeah. It's any of those older cars. I mean, this is what we're seeing with some of the guys that are importing, kind of like importing their Dream WRX or STIs, like from the early '90s, early to mid '90s. That's one of the big challenges with those is that there's just so many things that are not available on those cars either.
Yeah.
That yeah, it's it's a shame because there's such a following, there's such a demand for those
Mhm.
cars. Yeah, again, the like people are like I've always wanted a 96 STI Type R or whatever, and you finally import it, you finally get it here,
Mhm.
and then you have some kind of an issue with like the air conditioning or
Yeah,
the gearbox or something like that, and come to find out like, oh yeah, there's
there's
all
no
those parts are
options to
just
fix it.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah, which I find it really odd though, because like I just went through this with my RX-7,
Hmm.
which that car I did the exact same thing I did with the Subaru. I tore down and completely. That
Hmm.
car though, that car's older than my RS is, and I was able to buy every single trim panel, every single weather strip, everything brand new. You can still get for that thing.
Yeah.
And with Subaru, I'm like, oh, because when I went into the Subaru rebuild, I was like, dude, I can totally just like the RX-7, I can just buy all these seals brand new still. Come to find out that is that is not the case
Right.
at all, which surprised me because like I mean, granted, the RX-7 and I guess the coupes ran till 2001. They were both
Hmm.
produced till 2001. Mazda still makes the stuff, and Subaru was like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah. I think Subaru there's a little bit of a disconnect on Subaru for parts for old cars.
Hmm.
I think we're at a point where people like the interest in the older cars, like the coupes, the RSs, is really coming back. I mean, it's always been there. It's always been reasonably strong, but I
Yeah.
think it's even stronger now than it was 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And I think there was just this lull because I'm sure that Subaru is doing a calculation of like, well, it's going to cost us this much money to do a run of these parts. This is what our average sale rate is, and that means so we do one run of these parts, and we'll have these for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And then they just don't do it. Um, but I think that the demand has changed. There's more and more people like yourself that are going back and that you want to build these GCs. And I
Which
think,
I mean, from like my standpoint, I would think Subaru would be all about it. People like saving their old cars, keeping them on the road, and
yeah,
everything like that. And it's very difficult to even do that without having even like because there's no third party options without having
right.
the support from Subaru to be able to do that. Because
Yeah,
the other stuff, the engine, the drivetrain, all that, you can get that from an STI, no problem. But the
yeah.
body specific stuff, it's just like if you don't have it, you're not getting it.
All right. So we have to figure out we have to figure out a way to twist Subaru's arm here, folks. I think that's what we have to do. So in the comments, what I'm thinking is maybe like some kind of a hashtag like save the GCs or something like that. But
Anything.
I think we need to start a letter writing campaign in the digital age. So that's hard because I don't know how you put the letter into the internet, but something along those lines. We have to
Start
start,
email blasting everyone at Subaru.
yeah, yeah, just like Subaru parts or something like that. Because what's happening is the GDs are now getting hit with the same thing.
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff in the GDs that is going away.
Well, what's disappearing from the GDs? I thought they were still making all that stuff.
No. Power window switch. So what I've run into with my WX power window switches are gone. The keys, the lock and cylinder sets are
Hmm.
also gone. So like if you have any kind of an issue, like where we ran into this is a guy had his car that was broken into and stolen, and so they messed up the lock and cylinder set and discontinued. Can't get it anymore.
What?
Um, yeah, and some of the I want to say that some of the aluminum hoods are starting to get quite scarce, kind of like what happened with the GC aluminum hoods. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff with the GC or the GD cars that are now starting, like from the weather. I think the weather stripping has actually gone on the GDs now as well. Don't
That
quote me
doesn't
on that,
surprise me.
but I think that
That'll
that's gone.
probably be like one of the first things to go because once they're gone,
Yeah, well, and like the carpets, I saw your most recent video where you're working through
oh
the
dude.
carpets. So they, because not, I mean, how many people have to go through and replace carpet? Not very many, and so the
I feel
demand
like
is
on
not there.
all the older cars, I mean, they could use it. Like they're
Yeah,
so worn and bad, and all the third party options are so bad.
yeah, yeah. I feel bad. I saw what you went through trying to make that work, and
Dude,
oof,
I spent
brutal.
6 hours cutting that carpet to try to get it to fit. You know, I was like,
Oof,
after that, I was like, this is not, it's not going to look nice.
yeah. So yeah, we've got to kind of get the word out to Subaru that like, hey, you guys gotta support these cars a little bit.
Like, I
But
feel like Subaru is, and I know I've owned two VBs. You guys are doing the VB stuff and a lot of
mhm,
the other stuff, but I feel like from where Subaru was to where they are now, they've kind of changed as a company. Like I understand both on the like the EPA aspect where they have to follow new guidelines and whatnot, but that aside, they're the shift in market that I've seen from Subaru has also been a little bit different from where they used to be. I mean, they used to be like the weird turbocharge everything,
Hmm.
make awesome, really cool cars to more of like the we're gonna do like the A to B because I know that's where most of their sales are. A to B stuff, consumer cars. We'll still do the WRX situation, kind of that stuff, and we'll make a joke of an STI now for Japan. And they they don't seem like the same company they used to be anymore. So I would really like them to do some type of legacy program for like their
Yeah.
at this point classic cars, because I mean
Yeah.
they're nearing that age where they are classic cars. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Bug Eyes, mine is an '03 and I realized it's 22 years old. Like,
yeah,
holy crap.
I
So,
remember when Bug Eyes were like 10 years old.
yeah, long time ago now, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over a decade. Yeah. I think Subaru is, they're trying to figure out what the next step is.
Mhm.
I mean, we as enthusiasts, I mean, we want things like the SCI and fun, exciting cars. And I think they're moving strongly into the hybrid era. You know, to another extent, like they're really moving away. Well, the EJ is now dead. You know, the
That's not
last
dead.
EJ was
They're still making
21.
parts for it. I wouldn't say it's dead yet.
Well, they are, yes, but like they haven't had an EJ in a car for a good long
Yeah,
time.
no.
They're moving over to the
I mean
FA
that
series.
engine will never go on a production car that'll be sold to a market again. I could never
Probably
see it
not.
back.
I don't think so, but it's like I'm sure that they're trying to think of like, well, how do we decide how many of these things we're going to make? I mean, and believe me, you know, there's still demand for EJ parts, you know, cylinder
Mhm.
heads, shirt blocks,
Oh,
all that sort
they're
of
always.
stuff.
I mean, they made them for so long. There will always be a demand for the EJ stuff.
Well, but what's interesting is seeing the things that they've discontinued now. So, like the 2.2 turbo blocks, of course, like we only got that through 94, but the last
Yeah.
one of those new, pretty much that was 2000 when I started, I I think I ordered one in and then they were gone. The
Hmm.
new 2.2 turbo blocks. That was like I want to say 2006 maybe.
Yeah.
So 20 years. But like a lot of any of the NA 2.2 stuff is gone. Um, they don't even have engine support for that stuff anymore.
No, I mean that
Um,
doesn't surprise me. For I think the 2 liters will phase out soon, but I don't
mhm.
foresee the 2.5 stuff going away for a long time.
I think 20 years is the point. So like there's the phase one 2.5 NA cars that have the dual overhead cams.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about those for whatever reason is a lot of the guys that built sand rails,
Hmm.
they liked those phase one 2.5 dual overhead cam heads. And they use buckets just like the newer EJ stuff does. And if you look at them, they look like they're the same, but it turns
Yeah.
out they're not. They're like 3 millimeters smaller for the phase one 2.5 heads. And the vast majority of all of those buckets are now discontinued. So because we have the way we organize, I don't know why, but we were the first people to organize buckets in order of size. So you can just say, I want this size and you can order them. And we did that for both the older ones and the newer ones. And I've had people with sandrails and stuff that are still trying to go through their heads and rebuild their engines. And like come to find out, like, yeah, these things they're just gone now.
Yeah, because that's how it was with my EG33 because we
Mhm.
converted them all, and I'm pretty sure that they use the phase one buckets because
Yeah,
they're not the same as EJ25 ones.
yeah, yeah. So that's yeah. Again, we got to start this letter writing campaign and just tell Subaru you got to support these things because it's yeah. There's so much heritage there and there's so much enthusiast support for these older cars that like
Mhm.
yeah,
That's
it's
I
just
mean
crazy to me.
that's the hard thing that because I've got a couple buddies who work at Subaru, and that's I feel like that's the hard thing with them is they get to an extent, some of them get upset with people modifying the cars. And I think that's more on like the newer side of it, just because like you get people who try to like fool the warranty. I'm like,
Mm,
and that's why I tell if you're gonna modify your car, just accept the risks. Like that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. Don't try to fool Subaru. But when people do that, then Subaru gets mad at the enthusiast side. So it's like
yeah.
I get where Subaru comes from, where they're like, well, we don't want to deal with it, we don't want to touch it. All of our money is made from the A to B consumer cars. Let's just focus on those because at the end of the day, Subaru's a company. They got to make money and they got to do their thing. So like I get both sides of it, but being on the enthusiast side, it sucks at times with trying to find some of that older stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's the thing is like, man, the enthusiasts, that those of us that are willing to like put in the effort to like deep dive and try and find these things and actually
Mm-hmm.
spend new parts money on trim pieces to make the car like new. Like,
Yeah, if Subaru came
yeah.
out with all the trim pieces, they were $300 each. I'll bite the bullet. I'll buy them all because I'm
And you're not going to be
obviously
alone.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other people out there who would do it too. Would it suck to pay $300 per trim piece? Obviously, but if that's the only option, at least there is an option.
Yeah. And some of these other companies like Nissan with their legacy stuff, I mean, the price definitely goes up because the batches
Yeah.
go down,
Mm-hmm.
but at least to keep the cars running. I mean, when you have these cars that are iconic, I mean, something like the STI, I would say like the 25 RS, heck, even back to the legacy turbo from the early
Yeah.
90s. These are iconic cars that it does nothing but help Subaru to have them still be on the road.
Yeah, because I
I would
remember
think.
when I used to have a 1993 Skyline GTST. I remember when I had that car, I could drive. I actually did. I drove to my local Nissan dealership and I picked up a GTR bumper for the car because
Wow.
they had their legacy program. They had all of these GTR, GTST parts and all that stuff in there, and you could just go to the dealer and go pick
Mhm.
one up. I'm like, why? I
Yeah.
feel like
Subaru.
Nissan is struggling a lot more than Subaru right now, and if Nissan can do it, I mean, I don't see why Subaru can't.
Right, for sure. I totally agree. All right. We should move on because
Yeah,
I think
old old part stuff. We can just go
yes.
down a rabbit hole on that.
Leave your yes, that's right. Man, yeah, we have talks like this around the shop all the time. But yeah, leave your comments below how we can get this campaign going to Subaru to get them to bring back parts. But let's move on to cars. Let's talk about the
Mhm.
projects. What's going on? What are you thinking with the RSTi and with Blue?
So, I mean, with the RSTi, that car should be coming, hopefully at this point, should be coming together pretty quick. Kind of moving through today. I'm going back over there. I actually just, speaking of old, rare, hard to find parts, I actually just got the airbag delete for the
Oh,
passenger side that has the whole
yeah.
cubby and everything. Because, I mean, with running the Haltech and everything like that, the SRS system in that car, A, it's old, B, it's probably not going to work as it should. So I was like, oh, we'll get the cool little cubby. But
Hmm.
that one should be wrapping up most of the interior stuff this afternoon. I keep trying to put off body work, but I just need to do it. I just bought the trunk and the wing last night, so I'll probably wait to jump back on that body work stuff. Engine should hopefully be going in next week. Just waiting on the cases to come back from out front, which I think they'll ship out tomorrow.
Hmm.
Cylinder heads are at the machine shop right now, so those should be coming back by the end of the week. And then at that point, it's just little stuff. Get the car up and running, get it out this season, and go have fun with it. Blue,
Yeah.
the 17 STI, that's I sent that car to Fab. It came back from Fab, and now it's just sitting in my overflow spot for whenever I get up the courage to start messing with that thing. So
Well,
it
you've
went.
had I was gonna say you've had a couple ideas of what to do with it. I mean, what is your current thought as far as what engine is going to go in there? Maybe
Oh,
even just
we're
initially.
committed now. We're committed
Okay.
now. So
Okay.
the car has been converted to rear engine.
Yep.
So they modified the front subframe. We took the rear diff out of the front. We put it in the front of the
Hmm.
car, flipped it upside down, put a new breather hole in it. We don't know if the diff is going to live. We flipped it upside down. So we don't know how the oil is going to get flung in the diff and if it's even going to survive. So that one's just kind of like we'll
Hmm.
see what happens type of situation. The entire rear of the trunk has been cut out. The whole rear end of the car is now tube frame, and the rear subframe has been modified to accept an engine. So that will be another EG33 going into this one, but
Okay.
this one will be stroked to a 37. So it'll be 3.7 liter. And instead of running one massive turbo where I'm trying to shove a ton of PSI through the engine to make power, in order to reduce cylinder pressure, because cylinder pressure is what's going to kill an engine. You put too much
Mm.
cylinder pressure in an engine with heat and everything else, it doesn't make for a good time. If you go back and you watch my videos of dyno tuning that car, you can see we had so much pressure and heat in that thing, it melted the exhaust manifold and blew it out. So
Whoa.
this time, instead of running one massive turbo, we're going to be running two smaller turbos. So it'll be a twin turbo setup. So rear engine, it's still all wheel drive. So twin turbo, rear engine, all wheel drive. It's basically a 911 turbo made entirely out of Subaru parts at this point.
Yeah. Sounds like, yeah, 3.7. Yep, you're pretty much there with the displacement even. Yeah. Did you find a reverse ring and pinion
Mhm.
for the front ring and pinion? Okay.
For the transmission, there's a company in Australia called Suba Gears. They make a mirrored bell housing. So in order for us to be able to fit everything
Oh,
in
okay.
backwards, we need a mirrored bell housing. And then we also need the reverse ring and pinion to change the output of the transmission. So now 1 through 6 will technically be reverse gears, and reverse will
Hmm.
technically be a forward gear, but with the transmission flipped 180 degrees, that'll propel the car in the proper
Right.
direction. And with axles too, because that was a weird one that a lot of people had. We're able to use OEM axles still.
Wow.
So there's a little
Whoa.
bit of modification we have to do with the axle stubs. Take
Okay.
the rear cups off, put them on the front stubs, and then that becomes a rear axle.
Oh yeah.
And then vice versa, but there's no need for custom axles or anything like that.
So
So
you're actually you've got a lot of the problems solved, and now
mhm.
it's just kind of
Now it's just
get the
putting it all
parts in.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people are like, that's never going to work. You're not going to be able to, in theory, like, do I know if it'll work? Obviously not. I have
Mm.
never seen this done before, at least in a STI using all Subaru parts. But I mean, in theory, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work.
Yeah. I mean it's gonna it seems like everything will connect. The car will move under its own power. The engine seems like I'm guessing that you're working, is it without front to do the 3.7 stroker?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna it'll be gone through out front. I've got
Yeah.
the case and the head sitting at the shop right now. So because I don't want to start that project till I get the RS done because I don't like having multiple
Right.
projects all going on at the same time. So I probably won't even send the engine out to be built up until I get all the fab and everything else done because I can use that stock case and heads and just put them together and put a long block in the car to be able to do mock-up of everything. So I
Hmm.
kept some stuff from the old setup on the car, like the intake manifold, the coil pack connection, the brackets, things like that, that could be reused on this. Granted, when I decided to part out the car prior, I also didn't know I was going to be doing all this because the initial plan was like, oh, I'm just going to put a 2JZ in the car. And then
Right.
that just seemed too easy. So why not make life more complicated and put the engine in the trunk?
Why not, I guess. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got a path, and yeah, I think one giant project at a time is probably a good idea there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to tackle them one at a time. Like it's not necessarily like I could tear them both apart and have all their parts separate and whatnot, but then it becomes for the videos, it becomes very difficult to jump back and forth between, okay, we're going to build this car today. Now we're going to build this
Yeah.
car today. Now, and I've done that in the past. And like even being the one doing that, it becomes very difficult, but it also becomes difficult to watch. So
Yeah.
one at a time.
One at a time. Well, and so to that end, because you've been doing a ton of body work, and I know that it's monotonous, and
It's
I
so
know
bad.
in some of your, I think you had a post or something like that, like send help or something like that. I'm gone crazy or something
Oh,
to that
dude,
effect.
yeah, that sounds about right.
So how do you mentally work through that? Because that's one of the hardest parts, I think, when you start working on your car is like the best case scenario is like there's a problem, you know what the problem is, you know where the problem is, you take the part out,
Mm-hmm.
you put a new part in, problem solved, car works, and then wow, glad that's over and done with. But like so many times, especially with the level of fabrication stuff that you're doing, it's not as simple as that. A lot of times it's like put part on, take part off, modify part, put part back on, take part back off, modify part again, like swear a lot, put part back on, and then it's close enough, and then you move on to the next thing. And there's a skill there. I mean, how do you work through that? And like body work is
I
even
mean,
like
with
that to
like
the
with the
next degree.
bodywork aspect, because it's like the wide body on that car. It took me 3 weeks to get that wide body from being a fiberglass panel to being on the car, painted and molded. And like 90% of it is sanding.
Hmm.
And with the bodywork side, it's like physically I can do it. It's like it's just moving a DA or just sanding, but on the mental aspect, you start going a little crazy because you're doing the same thing for in my case, I'm there 10 hours a day,
Yeah.
sanding, molding, and trying to get it as perfect as I can. So with me, I'll like with the videos, that's why like all the bodywork stuff is time lapse because I will just put a podcast on my speaker and I'll listen to literally anything to try to get some type of cognitive thought in my mind that is not staring at sandpaper and dust everywhere.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, it's just trying to like just like I'll listen to your guys' podcast, IAGs, or some other random podcast that might come up and just try to like think about something cohesive versus sitting there and being like, okay, I need to just keep sanding type of situation. The other stuff, like there's a lot of monotonous stuff when it comes to like cars. I
Hmm.
mean, whatever, if I'm building an engine, like measuring an engine out, that can take hours. I mean, same
Hmm.
thing. Well, I'll get all my measurements, I'll see what's going on, and same thing back and forth, put an engine together, put bearings in, measure it. Oh, these clearances aren't where I want, take it apart, put new bearings in, torque it back down. It's all the monotonous stuff. I try to just like distract myself mentally so that way I can at least have some type of cohesive thought because like putting a bearing in an engine, torquing it together, then putting a bore gauge in there. I mean, it's not hard work per se.
Yeah. But it's important to take those steps
Yeah.
because I think that's one of the bigger mistakes that I made, especially when I started getting into things, and it is just going, it's good enough. Like I could take it out and I could put it back together better, or I could fix this little thing that might come back to bite me later.
Good enough
But
always comes back to I have to fix this.
yeah, good enough means not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just forgot the not part.
Yeah, it's either done or it's not done. I mean, that's how I look at a lot of it. It's
Yeah.
right or it's wrong.
Yeah. Well, and then with the painting and the sanding and stuff, I mean, you've got to be to the point now where the other end of it is you spend these 3 weeks doing all this work, but you finally get to the point where like, there's color on the car, it's taking
Oh
shape,
yeah.
that the white body disappears and everything is looking the way that
Mhm.
you pictured it in your head when you're sanding everything down, and then that's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to see it all in one color and you see it like start to come together, you get excited and you start to get some of that motivation back. And then you turn back and you look at the pile of parts that you still have to sand and skim coat and primer and paint. I mean, I think I run into a demotivation factor with it mainly because I don't have access to like a paint booth like everybody like I'm not saying like everybody, but like some other people have.
Mhm.
So when it comes to like painting for me, it's not like a let's just put the parts in the booth, clean them off, and like get to spraying. For me, it's I have to spend 2.5 hours masking the car in the shop. I have to spend another 45 minutes cleaning and mopping the floor. Then I have to get all the parts set up. But oh, wait, I need to paint the inside and the outside of the door. I don't have all this fancy paint equipment, so I can only do one of the two today. And then I have to let it cure for another 5 days before I can flip it over. So that way the primer doesn't get. And, you know, for me, it's just like not having access to a lot of that stuff that I feel
Mhm.
like other people would be like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Let me just wheel it into the booth, put it on a stand, and paint both sides of it. So I get a little bit demotivated when I'm like, all right, cool. I just primered the inside of a door. Now I got to wait 4 days before I can flip it over and do the other side. So
Right. Oof.
and there is a demotivation factor to it, but like you said, once you start to see it all like come together with the color and everything else, like actually on the car, and the car starts becoming more cohesive, you're like, all right, yeah, cool, let's get through this, let's do it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
last night, I just ordered the trunk and the wing for the car. So originally, I was going to use just the factory steel trunk, and I welded up all the holes on it, and I started like putting all the bondo, not bondo, but the fiberglass reinforced filler on there, and then I thought to myself, well, a steel trunk plus a fiberglass wing, that trunk's not going to want to open with the factory springs that are in the trunk thing. So I was like, all right, we'll just go carbon trunk, paint the carbon trunk,
Mm.
get a fiberglass wing with a carbon blade, and all that together should hopefully be around or close-ish. I don't think it'll be around the same weight as a steel trunk, but it'll at least be better than trying to stack more weight on a steel trunk with factory springs.
Oh yeah.
So you know, that's just a little stuff when you're going through it.
Yeah,
There's a lot to think about when putting these cars together that I don't think a lot of people realize, where you have to kind of account for some of that stuff.
for sure. Yeah, just in terms of weight of things, how things go back together. Like, are there things you're doing now with these changes that are going to make like the trunk of the wing not be
Mm.
able to open correctly or something like that? But
Yeah.
I think it's wise to break things up too when possible, because like yeah, getting that interior together and the carpet, and it's just not just an empty shell now. You can actually sit in the car and kind of squint a little bit and like
Mhm.
I see how this is going to start to come together, and yeah.
Yeah, and that's the especially with the RS, like doing an RSTi conversion. I had always been under the assumption for years that you just take STI parts, you put them in these cars, and
Mhm.
it's an RSTi. And there's so much more to it than you just take these parts, you put it in. There's so many little nuances that people don't mention that when it comes to doing these swaps, that it makes it a little bit frustrating at times because you'll read a couple forms, you'll be like, okay, I just need to put this part in and everything will be fine. Like one of the issues I ran into because I didn't see this and there were some forms I was able to dig it up out of, but with my car, so I have a more sport front subframe in the car,
Mhm.
tubular, and then I have the stock RS rear subframe. And I didn't realize that if you use a stock RS subframe, some of the STI stuff doesn't work.
Hmm.
Like the R180, you with your R180 rear diff, you have to pull the studs out of the R180 and put R160 studs in it because
Yeah.
the subframe is thicker where that mates up. But if you use an RS subframe with an R180 with R160 studs, then an STI drive shaft won't fit. So
Oh.
there's a lot of little nuances when it comes to the swap that a lot of people don't mention that
Hmm.
that can make it a little bit frustrating. Like if you have like an '05 STI, yeah, you can strip that thing. If you have like a donor car, you can strip it all down, put it all in, it'll be fine. But I was under the assumption with some of this stuff that okay, I can just reuse some of these parts, and because they were in good shape, I didn't
Yeah.
see a point in spending money on extra stuff if I have parts already that are still in good shape. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's little stuff like the carpet, the whole carpet situation. That was another
Yeah.
one. Everyone was. I saw the carpet debacle since we put an '07 STI carpet in a '98 RS. I saw a whole bunch of people going back and forth online where they're like, the carpet's not going to fit well at all, or it will fit well. And then it's like you get it, and then you start like making these little modifications to it. You can make it fit almost OEM,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
almost factory OEM. So it's just the little stuff. It's a little stuff with it.
It's the extra time. That's the good enough is like, no, you gotta take that one step further, pull it out one more time and make
Yep.
those corrections just to get it to be as close as it can be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then it all starts to come together and
It
yeah,
does.
it's then it starts to get exciting.
Yeah.
It will
Once
happen.
it's the process of getting through the monotonous stuff and the frustrating things. But once you pass that, smooth sailing,
Hmm.
everything's kosher, and you get to see the rewards from the labor.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, and let's talk a little bit about that because that's what your purpose is with this RSTi, right? Is to get it done, but then this one, the plan is to get out there and use it to play with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the RS, it's going to be going. I'm going to be doing roll racing, drag racing, time attack, and road trips in it. And obviously, I'll drive
Okay.
it on the street every now and then. So for the road trips, the plan is to take it to every Subi Fest event west of Texas this year.
Okay.
Because I've always said that I wanted to get out and do them. It'll be a fully rebuilt car. It'll be reliable. It'll be solid. It'll be fine. We're not shooting for the moon on this car either, so we're not going for all the power. So get it out to these events. Actually, let people see the car. Go hang out with people while we're out and about. Try to hit up any of the tracks in those areas that I can if they're open, just to go have fun with the car. We have the Ridge Motorsports Park up here because now that I've got my truck and a couple other cars, I don't have to rely on this one car to be like a daily
Hmm.
driver. I need it to be like super reliable where I can't beat on it or anything. And now that I do have the truck, granted, it's not the perfect truck to tow vehicles with, I can tow with it. So if anything does
Yeah.
happen at a track, I can easily bring the car back. So
Hmm.
gonna be getting it out, doing like the Ridge Motorsports Park. We have that up here. Try to do some of their events as they come up. I actually joined. There's a group up here called Avance, so I joined their
Hmm.
group because they have discounts on track days. So I was like, if I could save money, because dude, some of these tracks up here are expensive. So if I can get
Sure.
discounts on it, I'm all for it. And it was like $150 a year for the membership. I'm like, that'll easily pay for itself.
Oh
So
yeah.
this one will be properly used, and I know I have a track. I have a track record of building cars and selling them. And a lot of people are like, are you going to get rid of the RS? I'm like, absolutely not. There's no money to be made in this car. At the end of the day, it is a 300,000 mile side swiped 2.5 RS. That car
Right.
would never turn a profit. The RX-7 is a different story. That's a stock body, clean title, low mileage, desirable car. So no, there would never, unless someone was like, hey, I'll give you $500,000 for this car. I'd be stupid to
Oh
say no
man.
to that, but there's no money to be made on it. So it's like this is a car that I'm gonna enjoy, I'm gonna properly have fun with and keep long term. Because like I said, it's a 300,000 mile RS.
Yeah.
No one's gonna pay top dollar for something like that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it isn't anymore. I mean, you've really stripped it down to like bare metal and built it back up again. But yeah.
But when
Yeah.
it comes to a car like that, and going through this with selling the RX-7 on auction, the people who want collector car, they don't want something like that. They that is like the farthest thing that they want to buy.
Yeah.
If they're spending top dollar on a car, they want a car that's low mileage, clean title, they can put in and let it either increase in value or just drive it every now and then. So it's like even on like the top dollar spectrum, this is not something that would even appeal to. And there would be a TMU car, so true mileage
Right.
unknown, since it's going to be a digital dash, which also hits the value. So it's like there'd be no point.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, especially with like we're hitting to that point where like the cars from the 90s to the very early 2000s, kind of like those halo cars for people that are, late 30s, 40s, maybe early 50s at this point, were the halo cars growing up. And
Yeah.
those are the cars that we're seeing this big resurgence. But then yeah, I mean, you spend I don't know, like NSXs, those early NSXs. I mean, those are six-figure cars now, even
Hmm.
with like stupid miles, if it's large, original, and in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it's like how many people are getting it because that's their dream car they've always wanted to have and they just want to drive it, and how many people are seeing the value increase and they're trying to use it as an investment.
But most of the
And
ones I see are just value based. Like
yeah,
a lot of these guys are picking them up and keeping them. Like the gentleman who bought my RX-7, super nice dude, super
hmm
cool dude, and he wanted an RX-7 that had been completely gone through, restored and whatnot. But he told me, he's like, I'm going to use this as a car I'm going to drive and enjoy. He's down in Florida, so he doesn't have to worry about like too much inclement weather. I mean, I
hmm
guess hurricanes every now and then or something like that. But
yeah,
he understood, like, because it's a highly modified
hmm
RX-7 that's on a standalone and all this other stuff. So he was like, yeah, I'm not buying it as a collector car. I'm buying it as something that I'm going to go out there and actually drive and enjoy. So I mean, I guess there's a market for everything out there, but some cars with not the cleanest of titles and high mileage typically don't tend to sell well,
sure,
no
sure.
matter what's done to them.
And what's weird is there's so many good cars of this era
Mm-hmm.
that now it's like, man, it like again, I guess the NSX is an example, is like it's such a good driver's car, but now the value is so high that you'd
They
almost
don't
have to
get
be
driven.
crazier to go out there and drive it. And then so now everybody, we just all kind of lose the possibility of having that experience. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a shame.
Yeah, I mean that's any of the how I see any of the '90s, early 2000s cars at this point are all becoming gems. Like um, I any of the like the desirable JDM cars, European cars, even American cars from the '90s to 2000s, everyone's just trying to grab at this point, hold on to. You can see the price of them going up. Like my RS, for example, I've
hmm
paid $3,000 for a two-door RS that had been sideswiped at 300,000 miles. I
Yeah,
remember 10 years ago, clean title, non-sideswiped, higher mileage. That's a $500 car,
yeah,
even for a coupe at the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. You're not wrong. I mean that's yeah. I don't know that like GDs are going to go the same way that GCs were just because there's so many more GDs out there in the world
I
versus like
think I
especially the
think
G5 RS.
GDs will. I think GDs will start to come up in price for under 100,000 mile clean title non-rusty cars. I think they will.
Mm,
The ones I never see increasing in value are GRs and VAs. I never see those cars increasing in value unless it's like an S209 Type RA or some special edition. There's so many of them made that
yeah,
they're not necessarily rare or hard cars to come by. As
yeah.
for like a clean GD or even a GC, GM6, GCA, any of those ones, you're spending top dollar for anything that's clean now.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean that pretty similar driving experiences, but they are different. I mean, like I'm trying. My goal is to get my WRX to the point where I could take it to the track a few times this year and go through
Mhm.
it. And but like just getting back in that car, like how small it is, and how like you can feel the difference in weight
Yeah.
because it's just smaller and lighter. I mean, it's just different. You hop back in those things. Like for one, it's like the window feels like it's right there. Like
Hmm.
it feels like my elbow's always hitting the door, but it's just like everything feels very much more compact and more nimble.
Yeah, because you have you gone from driving your guys' VB over to the Bug Eye, like back to back comparison? Because last year I had my '07 STI and I had my 22 WRX, and
hmm
going from driving the 22 WRX over to the '07 STI, I'm like, this is significantly smaller. This car is tiny in comparison,
Yeah.
and
Um,
it feels a lot more like. Grant, I
mhm,
understand that the VBs technically and on paper have a stiffer chassis, but
mhm.
going into driving like a GD STI, that car feels way stiffer and way more intact, I guess you could say.
It 100% smaller, yes. And
Yeah.
I've not like driven them back to back. I mean, I pull the VB out
Mhm.
to start working on my car, and so like a little bit back to back, but just in the parking lot. So I don't think that really counts.
Oh, do you just like
Um,
go out and just like even to like a mountain road, just back to
yeah,
back, go from the WRX to the Bug Eye, and you'd be like, this is insanely different.
we're taking the VB out for a little bit of a road trip this Friday, so that'll be a decent amount of seat time to like really get familiar with it.
Hmm.
I'll say because I think this is pretty for sure happening. So I-70 from basically goes up from Denver into the high country, and the Eisenhower Tunnel is what kind of gets you through the Continental Divide and then on to the backside where all the ski resorts and stuff are. There's this town called Georgetown, which is just below where the Eisenhower Tunnel is, and it's probably at, I would guess, probably like 10,000, 11,000 feet, something like that. And there's a little lake up there. And because of how high it is, that lake freezes. And so they do ice racing up there in the winter, but it's usually only for like 4 or 6 weeks out of the whole year, because ice has to be like, it's something crazy.
It's got to be thick enough to be able to
18 inches thick or something like that. So we're taking the VB up to go and do a little bit of ice racing this Friday. So that'll be a lot of seat time in there to get familiar with it. And then I can hop back in the GD and see how different it is. And it definitely feels smaller. It definitely feels a bit more nimble, but I like the VB.
Yeah,
I think it's fun.
I like the VBs. I nothing negative. I just got bored of my VBs. That was the only thing.
Yeah, it's been fun raising it up and putting the gravel suspension on it so far. And the plan is to try to do a little bit more off-road stuff with it to really kind of like play with it in that arena. And it's surprisingly good so far, I think, in that way. And that's what makes it feel like a Subaru. Is like,
do you guys have any plans to do a 6-speed conversion, DCCD and whatnot, if you're going to be using it on gravel?
Long term, yeah. It's one of those just kind of picking our battles.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, Pikes Peak is coming up. It's February, so we've got 5 months, 4 months, 4 months. Oh God, yeah. Time is running out fast. And so it's one of these things where like we're about to really dive into going through our car for Pikes Peak, and that's probably going to be on the lift in pieces for probably the next 2 months, and then hopefully testing it. So like the window of time when we can actually have the VB up on the lift to like start going through
very short.
It's probably going to be July at this point,
yeah.
I would guess. Yeah. So like long term, yes, I think we want to do that because I think that will change that car. Like it'll bring that last bit to what that car could and should be like. I don't know. I mean, it's fun to drive. I'll be able to tell you. Yeah.
Speaking of VBs, what are your thoughts on the new STI?
The S210?
Was STI, S2, whatever they're calling it at this point.
Yeah. It's interesting. I would like to drive it. I would like to see what it's like. I don't think I'm gonna be vague here. So there's the rumor that went around that Subaru's bringing back the STI.
Yeah.
This is I don't know, 6 months ago at this point. And we talked about it. We had a whole podcast about it. Since then, I have gotten further off the record confirmation that it is highly likely that this is going to happen. And I won't go into any more detail than that, but it's taking more time because what I've been told is that Subaru, my assumption was when they kind of seemed like out of nowhere they killed off the STI, was that they had done most of the development so that when the FA24 WRX came out, they had co-developed both cars.
Yeah.
And then it just at the last minute they decided to pull the STI from it. And what I've kind of has been implied to me is that that's not the case, and that's part of the problem here, is that they actually did have to go back and do more development on the STI. But the rumors that I've heard from a couple people, not the journalist that Johnny Lieberman that did the initial link, but a couple other people off the record, is that they're doing it and that it's coming back, but it's not going to be here until next year or the year after. So
I mean, at that point, they're already coming up on a facelift for the VB.
It's super interesting. The timeline kind of makes sense, but then it also doesn't make sense because it's taking too long.
Yeah.
But who knows? So it's like, I guess the S210, I think it's interesting and I would like to drive it, but I don't think that is what these rumors are around. I mean, that really is basically just a tweaked version of the S4 WRX from Japan. But what I'm most curious about, and I don't know if we'll ever find out, is did Subaru Technica International figure out some way to tweak the CVT to make it like really deserving of being in an S car, an S series car?
I mean, I've driven a couple GTs, and I've never personally been a huge fan of CVTs, but to stick a CVT in an S car with, I believe that's the lowest powered S car they've ever produced.
Yeah.
Also,
Yep.
is it seems like it's just slapped together. They're like, okay, we feel obligated to release this because we've done one for X many X or the like X time frame. Because it's like, how many? I don't even, I've lost count of how many trim levels there are of this WRX at this point. Well, there's a base, a premium, a GT, a TR, a TS, an S210.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other
S4.
ones.
The S4 in Japan.
S4. It's like
Yeah.
they're coming out with every trim except for just an ST. Just make an STI. Just like make a proper one. Even if they just kept everything the same on the VB and they just put STI driveline in it and just tweaked a couple things.
Yeah.
I feel
And
like that would be way more acceptable and the people would be understanding.
to me, I really, I mean, it's pretty clear that they didn't do this, but to me, the TS, that's what they should have done. The TS,
Mhm.
that should be the difference between the TR and the TS. The TS, tuned by STI, has the STI drivetrain in it because basically everything else is going to be the same. It's that way, it's not just a different interior trim.
Yeah.
You're getting the driveline benefit.
Yeah.
That's if I was in charge, that's what I would do.
Yeah,
But
to make some type of, that's the other thing. I know we're backtracking here a little bit, but that's one thing that actually has bothered me with Subaru over the past couple of years is if you look at early Subaru, they actually had differentiation between the WX and the STI. And
yeah,
as time moved forward, that differentiation got a lot closer together and the choice of buying either a WRX or an STI wasn't that great up until like maybe 2015 again when they started putting an FA in one and an
mhm.
EJ in the other though. But like the gap from what a WRX and STI was over time just got closer and closer and closer.
I think that Subaru is just they're trying to figure out like the 5 year view. If you're a car manufacturer, I do not
Mm-hmm.
envy you. Like what is it going to be like in 5 years? Like
Yeah.
because now 2025, that's 2030.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're up against is how is the consumer market changing? Like what do people want?
Yeah.
That is changing in one direction. The emission standards and stuff like that and fuel economy standards are changing. So that's another thing. And then now we're in this kind of inconsistent environment where it's really hard, I think, to plan as a manufacturer 5 years into the
Well,
future
yeah,
to
well, it
kind of
doesn't
really
help that they
know.
keep going back and forth on like what
Yeah,
laws they're trying to like put in place, not put in place, and
yeah. I've seen interviews with people high up in car companies, and that's what they're saying is like the unknown, the inconsistencies in that say 5 year time window make it extremely difficult because I mean it most of the time it takes a couple of years to develop a car.
yeah. So
And if you're
say
going to
they
make
they
something
spend all
different,
this time developing it, a law changes, they're like, well, can't even do anything with this now.
yeah, yeah, I mean which I totally get.
Yeah.
And then there's just the obstacle of, what direction is the consumer market going to go? What do people want? What are people going to get excited about?
The prices too are getting insane on some of this stuff. Like
Yeah.
I was chatting with a buddy the other day about the new or just any of like a brand new WRX pricing. It's insane. It's like
Hmm.
you can get up to like $50,000 for a WRX. A WRX.
Yeah.
I was like,
The
and just even the starting price point, I think for just a base has come up to what 35,000.
yeah, well, because they got rid of the base, I think, for 25. So now you can't get the
So it's
base.
only premium being
Yeah,
the
so
very
it's
bottom trim.
yeah, so it's like 35. Yeah.
That's
I mean, it's so weird. I was actually just talking to a buddy of mine this morning about how like I feel old now because I remember when fill in the blank used to cost fill in the blank. And
mm-hmm.
it's just like to wrap your head around what current things cost. It's just crazy. I mean, that's why we did that thing where we kind of tried to factor in inflation for
Yeah.
for how much a WRX costs now versus how much it cost in 2002. And like, yeah, dollar wise, it's crazy. It seems crazy. But when you take the inflation out of it, it's actually, potentially cheaper than
Yeah.
than what it was in like adjusted dollars. And I kind of wonder if Subaru it gets in their head like that they're in that, well, I remember when it should be this, or like we have to keep the STI costing, they try to keep the base STI under $40,000 forever. I think even in
Yeah.
21, the base STI, I think it was still like
38 or
6,
39,
38.
I think.
Yeah, it was under 40. And I get it, and that makes it attainable. Like the really good thing of them doing that for so long is that makes it more attainable for more of us for longer.
Yeah.
That's there's nothing wrong with that. I will never say that there's anything wrong with that. But I always wonder, like, well, how much development got put to the wayside because they were trying to keep the cost down.
That's
Like,
fair.
well,
Well, speaking of like the cost aspect and like if they did come out with a new STI, because STI is obviously going to have to be more expensive than the WRX, that's probably going to put STI at $60,000,
yeah,
somewhere in that price
yeah.
range. If they do come out with another one, which I'm like, who's your market at that point?
Well, and this is I think this is the problem that I think Subaru gets in their head with is they say exactly that. Well, if we make an STI and we make it the way that we would want to make it, it's going to cost let's say $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that. We can't charge $70,000 for an STI. We have to back it off. I
Yeah.
mean it could I mean like if you take that one step forward, you could even make that could potentially be an argument in Subaru internally as far as why they got rid of the STI
Mm-hmm.
because that's now the WRX is now filling up the price point that the STI did.
Yeah. And once
And
you
it's
start getting into that 60, $70,000 price points, like, are people going to buy this for what is
right.
competing out there for that price?
And that's what's it competing with. That's the part that they also have missed. And that's what they lost with the STI towards the end there with not
Mm-hmm.
developing the car,
Yeah.
is that then other offerings came out that had more performance per dollar compared to what the STI was going for. They had
I mean, I think the only major changes from 2015 to 2021 was a facelift. I mean, obviously the RA block, but I mean that's not changing much in the engine. So I
the
mean,
brakes,
yeah,
brakes
but
in 19.
I mean, it's really not needed. The six pots. I mean, the for 95% of people, the four pot, two pots were totally fine, and they were probably cheaper to manufacture and put on there. The
Yeah,
jump from 18 to 19-inch, I feel like wasn't necessarily needed either.
yeah,
So I mean that they really didn't change much. Maybe a couple interior revisions from Starlink to have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a couple
yeah,
other small changes, but I mean that car didn't change at all
yeah.
in the 6 years that it was really out.
It not at all. But then the other new things came in, and like you got the GR Corolla. A lot of people there's that conspiracy theory that Toyota got them to kill off the STI so they could capture the market with the GR Corolla. But even then, like the GR Corolla is priced in the ballpark of what Subaru would envision an STI had been
Yeah.
priced. Low
I
to
mean, I
mid
was just looking
40s.
at a GR Corolla the other day. You can get one for like 35, $40,000.
Yeah, and performance wise, I think the GR Corolla is. I mean, all of those early tests where they were still testing it, comparing an STI like a 21 STI to was it the 23 GR Corolla the first year?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Corolla was way faster. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like that's the benchmark that Subaru would have to hit. But the thing is that they would have to hit that benchmark. That's Subaru would have to really up the game and the definition of what the SCA is from a performance standpoint to make sense to people to spend $70,000 on an STI.
Yeah.
They absolutely can do it, but they've just been resistant to do it. And that's where I think they're just in all this weird spot right now.
Yep.
Now to that end, I've got a weird statistic for you that we
Mhm.
discovered yesterday. January of this year, so last month, just a handful of days ago, they sold 1,000 Solteras. Okay.
That's actually surprising to me that they sold that many.
They only sold 1,500 WRXs.
Really?
hmm And I don't know if that's like model year changeover or if there's more to that number, but I think like this is the other turmoil inside of Subaru is that seeing what is going on with Solterra, which is not a perfect car for myriad of reasons, but the demand and the sales numbers, and it's at this price point where
Well, they get
yeah,
in the Solterra's defense, they put so many, like my buddy sells cars at Subaru, they have so many rebates and discounts on
mhm,
Solterra's to push them
yeah,
that I mean you can go down to Subaru. I think you can lease one for like 36 months for like $200 a month
yeah,
versus like
yeah,
because I think the average used car, new car monthly payment right now for most people is like 700, like $600 to $700.
sure,
I mean, that's not a bad deal. You go down, you can get a brand new electric car for $200 a month for 3 years.
yeah,
Whereas like the WR, they have no incentives on the WRXs at all. I
no.
think I think maybe just sell them at MSRP is what they're really trying to push for. So I mean, I could see that heavily influencing the Solterra stuff.
It does, but there's just all if you look at the sales history of the Solterra,
Mhm.
I mean, yes, there's incentives now, um, but I mean, they're selling. I think last year, 24, I think they sold. I want to say it was like 13 or 14,000 Solterras, which is way more than they ever sold STIs.
I'm curious what the I'd have to look it up. I'm curious what the sales figures are on the Toyota BZ4F, whatever the Toyota
Yeah,
version of Solterra is, just to see if like those reflect with like the Subaru numbers at all for the Solterra.
I I I think the Subaru, because it has a better interior, is doing a little bit better. Um,
Isn't
but
the
Toyota's
same
got all these
interior or just
hybrids.
different material?
I think it's the same interior, but with higher, higher level materials. Yeah, better
Gotcha.
accoutrements. Yeah, but I think that's if I was in Subaru's board, like that's where they're trying to figure out, like read the tea leaves, like why is this Solterra, the electric car, doing this, and then why are the WRX sales doing this? They don't necessarily reflect anything back to one another at all,
Yeah.
but like where's the market at? And now they're with all the hybrids that they're coming out with. I'm really curious to see because people have been wanting a better Subaru hybrid forever, and now they're getting it.
Yeah.
And I hope that they are fun, but we'll
It'd be
see.
nice if it's not Econo box hybrid type of situation.
Yeah,
I've also been seeing stuff where the EPA might be, like we talked about this earlier, the EPA might be letting up on auto manufacturers a little bit also, which would give them more leniency to kind of have more free room to develop and push their vehicles
yeah.
out a little bit, kind of maybe like they used to, but I don't know if a manufacturer would necessarily take a step backwards for for what they'd be doing. So I
How?
mean, well, we'll see
Yeah,
how it goes.
yeah. I mean, it's the question would be for how long, and but I mean, I mean, man, yeah. My guess is that that certainly could be some of the expectations for that being a possibility could be why there's all these rumors coming back about the SCI coming back
Yeah.
because a lot of the reason for them getting rid of it, what I was told from people internally was, the cafe standards, the sales numbers, the cost to rework the car, and then how long would they have to sell it to even hit the break even point,
Mhm.
before they couldn't sell it because it would have too much of an impact on the fuel economy standards for the brand. So like there's a lot of slide rules going to try and figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I don't envy them at all, but it's like we're like us as enthusiasts, it feels like we're just getting kind of like in this really tricky,
It
pickle
it
play or
makes
something.
it makes it a little bit difficult to continue to like and like the new Subaru stuff. I love the Subaru, the older Subaru, like pre 2021, I guess I should
Mhm.
say. Ever since then, like I've tried some of their newer stuff. It's just I I've never been a fan of it. So I mean maybe because the thing with Subaru is they have such a strong enthusiast base. And
Mhm.
they're trying to push these performance cars, but they're not listening to their enthusiast base at
Right,
all. So
right.
they have all of this free feedback that they're just choosing to ignore and just sit in a boardroom with people and then question why some of their car sales aren't doing well for their at least on their performance side of stuff. Like you have such a big focus group. Just like you don't even have to ask. You can just go online and listen.
We'll tell you. You call me. That our phone number is right on our website. I'll tell you. I'll
like
give you whatever rundown you want. Yeah.
I don't even think because I feel like Toyota actually did start listening to their enthusiast base with all the
Mhm.
changes they made with the Supra, the GR Corolla, the talk about the
Yeah.
MR2 stuff, and all this other stuff that they're pushing out. They're actually listening to the people that buy their cars. I
Yeah.
feel like Subaru is doing the opposite, where they're like, we're not going to listen to these people. We're just going to sit in our boardroom and pull ideas out of a hat and see what works. Like
Well,
we can tell you what we want to buy. You just got to listen.
the kicker is I think Toyota is a way bigger company than Subaru.
That they are.
And Toyota can, like with the GR Corolla, for instance, I mean
Mhm.
they can make it financially make sense to
Yeah.
make a much smaller production run of a car compared to where, like, I think that's where Subaru got pinched, is that just they sold so few STIs, but it's still it was so much unique development with the engine and everything like that. The expense is all going to be very high to develop that car, and then you're just selling this really small number in it. I think it was just not as easy for Subaru to absorb.
What was I'm curious They sold 27,141 STIs in 2021, which was a 28% increase from 2020.
But
So
but
they
I
saw
think
an
that
increase
includes.
in so they
But I
saw an
think
increase in sales and then started going down. And
but I think that includes the WRX too.
this is WRX STI model. Does that group them both together?
It's very hard to find the STI by itself.
I
I
mean,
don't.
I guess the STI is just a trim of the WRX.
It is, and I think that's why, and they don't want to break it out because the best years that I've heard there is about 3,500 STIs in a year.
That's surprising. Like I'm surprised that it's that low.
Well, I mean that's historically that's always been what it is. And like to the folks
Yeah.
at home, if you've got something concrete where it's like an actual STI sales number, put it in the links or in the comments below. But I'm pretty sure that like there was a number of years where it was sub 3,000 STIs that were sold. There's a lot of dealers that they could only get, like some dealers didn't get any for a
Mhm.
period of time. There's some dealers that would only sell like a handful of STIs per year compared to the WRX. The WRX is what drove that number up.
Yeah, they don't even give me any data. I'm looking at a chart for it, and it's completely empty.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard too because it's like this is what we as enthusiasts want, but the sales numbers just
Yeah.
aren't there necessarily, at least as
Which is why
far as
we
I know.
build the old ones now.
That's right. That's right. Well, and it's because it's about getting out there and using them. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that's the hardest part is if you're an enthusiast, you want to go out there and drive the thing. And so like it's kind of going back a ways, but that's where like the old one's getting so expensive.
Hmm.
Do you really want to, I mean, go out and drive it, take it up in the mountains. That, probably makes sense. There's probably a lot of people that are going to do that, but like are going to really push it and take it to the track and see what it can actually do, what it's actually capable of. Far fewer people, and
Yeah.
it just is going to make less and less sense as the value comes up. And then if there's not something that is replacing it with the current new crop of cars, then it's like we're all trying to find like some secret car from like the mid 2000s that actually was like a really fun car to drive that everybody forgets about that is still like $2,000 or $3,000 you can go and buy and just
I don't
have a good
think
time.
so. I mean, hey, if you come up with any, you'd let me know. I haven't found any of those secret ones quite yet.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see. That's the challenge for us as enthusiasts, I think, is to find that. Because
Hmm.
there's so many of us that still want to like you're saying, get out there and drive the cars, use it, go to the track, do all these things that we want to do with them. You gotta have a chassis to do it.
Yeah, that is
Mm,
true.
yes. All right. Well, man, we covered the gamut here today.
Yeah, we took a couple left turns in that.
Subaru parts and building cars, and then what's going on with Subaru. So, how's it? Okay. Well, Tanner, I know you got stuff to do, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. Um, but thanks again for making the time and man, really excited to work with you and help get the RSTi on the track, on the road, out there in the world. One of these days, maybe we'll have to like maybe find a super event that we can both
Well,
actually
you
meet
guys
up
have one
at.
in Colorado, don't you?
Not anymore. I
Oh,
think the
it's all right.
closest to us
It's
is now
okay. They
Texas.
took ours away too.
Okay. Yeah, which is weird because it always had a decent turnout, but I guess it wasn't big enough. I've not been to one of the ones in like California or on the East Coast, but from what I've been told, it's like orders of magnitude bigger than what we had here. So I'm curious.
When I'm
Maybe
out and about going to all these events, I'll swing by Colorado and come kick it with you guys for a day.
absolutely, you definitely should. And yeah, to you folks at home, if there's anything that you want to see us do to help support Tanner or help support Tanner, let us know and we'll see what we can do, see what we can figure out to make it work.
For sure.
So yes, well, Tanner, good luck out there, and we'll be talking again here real soon, I'm sure.
Oh
And
yeah.
to you folks at home, thanks for your support as always. Thanks for supporting Smeedia. Thanks for supporting us. And until next time, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.